What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to our history segment, part 4. And if you're new here, if you this is your first time here, this is called our history segment, where we revisit history and revisit topics that are shaping our world today. So, like topics that you're going to hear over and over, but also topics that you should be focusing on if you're trying to figure out what's going on in the world. Because, like, there's really so much going on in the world today, and when you try to figure it all out, it's so confusing. So, I started up this segment where we're going to be revisiting our history, but like not just African history, not just Black people history, but I'm talking about our history as humans. So we're going to be revisiting history in general, not just one race, but all the races. So basically, and not just a few hundred years, we're going to be revisiting history from the beginning of time. But this is just our part 4 of different series. I'm going to be posting it in different parts. So if you haven't followed, make sure you comment, make sure you follow, make sure you are keeping up with the new episode. And in today's video, we're going to be focusing on colonialism and the concept of colonialism. So we'll be talking about when colonialism started, because like colonialism has existed for a long time, way longer than they even tell us. And like we're going to be covering when did colonialism start, but also like we're going to be covering like what was the concept of colonialism to begin with. Again, I use most of my sources from Google or like websites that are open to the public or to the mass, so that if you want to do more research, you can do it, you can go and do more research. But also good thing these days, we have so many resources, we have so many websites where you can actually do more research and actually understand this stuff. Because again, there's so much going on and you need to educate yourself so you know what's going on. Also on a spiritual level, again, our history is spiritual, everything that's happening is spiritual. But in order for you to understand the spiritual side of it, you have to understand the physical side of it. And the physical side of it is what we're covering, our history. This is documented history, the history that they gave you. And yeah, most of our history has half lies and half truths, but that's why you are supposed to revisit it so you understand which stuff they lied about and which stuff they were right about. So yeah, let's get started. So first things first, what does colonialism even mean? So colonialism was a widespread practice that was practiced in different territories and different countries, and it was a practice where one country would claim territory over another country, and they would exploit them for resources, for labor, also for land. So basically colonialism was like kind of like a power move, and this was usually established after wars, after these countries established wars in different countries, and when they would lose, they will create territories and they will exploit them for labor, they will exploit them for their resources, and sometimes they will even get to an extent of chasing them out of their land. And sometimes they will take over the more developed part of the country and push the natives or those people in the bad parts of the neighborhood. And this happened in so many different countries and so many different territories and so many different continents. But the colonialism that we're all familiar with started in the 15th century, and it started with the age of the new discovery. So like the age of discovery, and this started by European expansions. So before, colonialism started in Europe, and it was most mainly in Europe, and they were like colonizing each other and enslaving each other. But the real colonialism that we're all familiar with, the global colonialism, started in the 15th century when Portugal and other European countries started establishing different territories outside Europe. And this started mostly in America, on the American continent. That's where they started, way before they even going to Africa. So the colonialism in Africa happened in the 19th century mostly, but colonialism started in Europe, Asia, and America way before it went to Africa. So the age of discovery was basically different European countries discovering different countries outside Europe. But here's the thing, that was their first time discovering other countries or other continents outside Europe, because they actually genuinely thought their own continent is the only continent that existed. So they only knew about Europe and Asia because they are so close to each other. And for a long time, they were busy enslaving each other, because even when you read through their history, way before the Arabs, the Persians, way before they even went to Africa, they started by enslaving each other. And the Romans are basically who we know as Europeans today. But like they were different races, and before they went to Africa, before they went to America, they were already enslaving each other. And after they finished enslaving each other, that's when they started establishing different territories and different colonies outside of Europe. And this was in the 15th century. So like that's not even too long ago. They tried to make it seem like Africa and America were the only places that got colonized. But the thing is, like, colonization started way before that. But honestly, even when you go back to history, colonization started way, way before, like, way before even the Bible or the stories in the Bible existed. Because even like when, if you've read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he talks about how in Atlantis they had colonies. So like colonization even started all the way there before it started here on Earth or on this planet that we know today. My favorite thing about revisiting history or just like reading the Bible and the Quran in general is that these people always snitch on themselves. And in my previous video, I talked about how the creation stories in the Bible don't relate to everybody, but that's because they were only for specific races. And that's why obviously these creation stories, they only belong to Christians, Muslims, and Jews. And these are three different races. So like you have Jews, you have the Arabs, you have the Persians, and the Romans and the Greeks. So you don't hear any Africans in there. But that's because the only time they always mentioned about Africa, they were always mentioning Egypt. And when they mentioned Egypt, they always mentioned it as the promised land. That should click to you. It's because even back then, like, Africans already existed and they already existed on their land. And honestly, Africa was one of the safest places to even be in. But also, it was like no everybody tried to colonize it for a long time and they couldn't. They didn't colonize Africa until the 15th century. But before that, they were colonizing each other. Like the Arabs were colonizing the Persians were colonizing the Arabs, the Greeks were colonizing them too. Same thing with the Romans. So they were busy colonizing each other way before they could even handle Africa. And here's the thing, that's why I keep saying Africans need to learn their own history, because like Africans don't even understand their own power because they don't even know their own history. The only history that we grew up learning, it was taught to us by Europeans. It was written by Europeans. But that's because they didn't want you to know your actual history. There is a reason why they didn't colonize black people until the 15th century. All the way before that, they were colonizing each other. That's why they even came to Egypt and they tried to colonize black people. But we left Egypt for them. All those stories that you hear in the Bible, they were trying to take over Egypt. They were trying to take over Africa. That's why they never give credit to Africa. Even when you go on Google and try to like learn about history about Africa, they only say a little bit, but that's because for a long time they tried to take over our history. They changed all our stories, they changed all our gods' names, they demonized all our history, but then they took all the good stuff. There's a reason why even colonization started in 15th century, because like that's when they were discovering other countries that existed. But before that, our ancestors, our African ancestors, knew about all these other continents way before. And they went and explored America, they went and explored Europe, and they were like, yeah, no, our continent is much better. Because like we had everything, we had all the minerals, we had all the resources. We just like, but like every other country, every other race, they kept coming there trying to exploit us. And when they came there, they came as in they were friendly until like they started taking over. Same thing with Arabs always act like they only came there to influence culture, but it started as colonialism, it started as colonizing. They just did it a different way from the Europeans. The Europeans literally copied from the Arabs. They were like, oh, so this is how you did it? We're going to come and learn from you. That's when the scramble of Africa happened. And the scramble of Africa, that was late in the 19th century. The 19th century, that's a century ago. So that's not too long ago. That's why I always tell you, Black history and African history is way more than just slavery and colonialism. That's because that was just a few hundred years ago. But our history existed way before that, and all these other races tried us, and they couldn't manage us because we had the strongest army, we had the best established systems, like our governments were working well, we had kingdoms that were organized, like every other race that came to Africa. They said that same thing, but so the funny thing is, like, when these colonizers came to Africa or when they came to colonize different countries, their first excuse was always that these people are so naive, these people are so nice. But that's because our ancestors were too nice and too welcoming. Like they welcomed everybody. Also, that's because we saw everybody as the same. We didn't really care about races. That's also why I always say in my videos that as Africans, we don't care about races because, like, in our country, we don't have that. We just see you as a person. So that's how our ancestors were too. And until colonization, that's when these Europeans and these Asians came to Africa and they realized we had all these resources, we had all these minerals, and we're not even using them. So they started exploiting. But they got a little too greedy because they were competing with each other. Like Spain was competing with Portugal, they were competing with Britain, they were competing with France, competing for Africa, but simply because of the minerals. But these people, they all hated Africans and black people, but simply because we had everything, but even we're not even bragging about it. We're the only race that never enslaved anyone. They will tell you, even like when you do research, they're going to tell you like, yeah, Africans started slavery way before colonialism happened. They're lying. We never had that. Yeah, there was poor people working for rich people, but it was never like slavery. But in Europe and Asia, their slavery started a long time ago. That's why in the Bible, they were always sending prophets to rescue different races, but that's because they were enslaving each other. Like when the Greeks took over, they would enslave everybody else. When the Romans took over, they enslaved everybody else. When the Persians took over, they enslaved everybody else. But the only race that never enslaved anyone was the Africans. The idea of colonialism in ancient times started with Phoenicians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Han Chinese, and Arabs. Like these were the first races that started colonialism. And they started by enslaving each other. But then after that, they started discovering other places outside of Europe and Asia, so they started colonizing other places too, Africa included. But here's the thing. Again, like I said, there's a reason why they didn't colonize Africa until the 15th century. But way before, even like when you revisit back in the Bible, or because like the Bible is a history book. This is another thing that most religious people don't understand, or most people don't understand. The Bible, the Quran, all these holy books, they're nothing but history books. So they're just records of things that happened, but it's just like more they didn't really tell you fully the truth about what they're talking about. And like Muslims, Christians, and Jews, they try to act like they're different, but they're all literally the same people. And there's a reason why they're all in the Bibles and in their books, they're all talking about the same stories. Even though they seem not to agree on them, they're all talking about the same creation stories. But that's because those three races were the ones that used to enslave each other, but they were all related. That's the thing. It's so funny because like when you revisit history, they're all related, but they never agreed with each other. That's why the Bible is based on the same bloodline. Like all these people are related, but for some reason they keep killing each other. Every race that will take over will kill the other ones because like they always wanted to be better. But Africa was never like that. And they came and took over Egypt because like Egypt was the reason why they always mention Egypt a lot, or ancient Egypt, or you can even call it Kemet, is because like Kemet was the headquarters of Africa. So Kemet was kind of like the headquarters of like everywhere. Like that's where the best scholars of the world met. That's where most of the best traders in the whole world met. So like that's where everybody met because like people were not, foreigners were not really allowed in Africa, only on the coastals. That's why even when colonialism took over, they took over the coastal areas first, where before they could even go, because Africa is big. That's another thing that people don't understand. Africa is very, very big. It's bigger than most continents. That's why now I remember I saw this post and they were talking about they're doing this protest because Africans are saying they want a real map that shows the real size of Africa, because for a long time they made Africa look small. But Africa is actually very big. And I always knew this because like even my country, Uganda itself, is very big, but on the map they always show it like it's small. But like in person it's very big compared to like American, like US states. Like they make it seem like America is bigger than Africa. But when if you've been to America, you realize these cities are actually not as big as they make them look. But in Uganda, the cities are very big. But that's because again, Africa needs justice. They changed all our history. They changed all our information for a reason, because like they knew we had so much power, and if we knew how much power we had, we'll put all of them in their places. And that's kind of what this year is all about, the truth coming out, but also it's all about you reclaiming your own power. Like you as a race, you have to reclaim your own power. Africans, we need to relearn our history. That's how we're going to reclaim our own power, because like our history is long and deep. Our ancestors fought to keep our history. That's why they couldn't take over our land. They tried to take over our land for so many years. They couldn't, because our ancestors fought so hard. And like when these colonizers came and took over Egypt, that was one of the first places they took over Egypt, and then they took over like most of North Africa. But that's all they could handle. So our ancestors left it to them, because like these people loved war. They were always fighting for everything. But our ancestors just wanted to chill and live with everybody. They didn't mind trading. They didn't mind, existing with other races. But the problem was those races. Those races didn't like living with other people, but mostly black people, because they were like, how, you don't look like us. How can you be better than us? And they didn't want to admit that. So they did whatever it took to make sure they broke Africa. And again, colonialism and slavery, they were never just physical, they were also spiritual. On a spiritual level, Africa was one of the most spiritual continents, because like spirituality was always a part of our life, it was always a part of our natural beliefs. And like until colonialism came in, then they introduced their religions. But they knew Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, those religions were all made up. They were all made up later on, but they tried to use them as a colonialism tactic. So they will always go to different countries and tell them like, we're here as missionaries, we're here to introduce our culture and our religion. And once these people adopted, they'll take over. Or sometimes they didn't even ask, they would just come and force people to believe in their religion. And if they didn't, they'll just destroy all their temples, they'll kill the people, they'll kill the kids, they'll kill the men and the families. They killed different kingdoms. So, excuse me. So colonialism was very deep, but today I'm gonna end here, because like it's a segment, and I'm gonna be doing different parts every single day. So make sure you follow if you haven't, like, comment any topics that you would like to hear in the future. And mostly this segment is all about revisiting our history from a spiritual perspective, so we can try to understand what's going on today in our world today, but also try to understand like what the fuck is going on in general. So yeah, peace out.